All right, welcome back to the Reserve Squad podcast. Today we are doing the sixth episode for the main panel. Hope everyone had a great championship weekend, even though the championship wasn't for play. A lot happened in the Premier League today. I have Andy and Ty with me. Frankie unfortunately cannot make it. It's Cameron here, your host. So make sure you give us a subscribe on YouTube. Go ahead and type in the Reserve Squad podcast, and it'll show right up. And now we are on Spotify, so make sure you check it out. Go ahead and just type in the Reserve Squad, and it'll show right up for you. Go ahead, add it to your favorites on Spotify, and listen on your way to work, etc. So let's get this started. We had a lot happening this week. Europe was decided, relegation happened, and a lot of fun games throughout. So Andy, Tyler, how you guys doing today? Welcome to the podcast. Andy, go ahead. How you doing?
Doing well, man. There was a lot that happened this past weekend. I'm looking forward to diving into it. United did secure Champions League. Oh, thank gosh. I can finally breathe. But I'm really excited to break it down and, dodge the bullet here. But we're looking forward to Champions League next year.
Definitely. Tyler, how about you?
What's up? Man, I'm doing good. It was an awesome weekend. A lot of fun to watch. A lot of exciting soccer. A lot of heartbreaks and heartwarming excitement, I guess you could say. Relief maybe is a better word for some teams. It was just a very good weekend in general. Very excited to dive into it as well.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, me too. Definitely had a good weekend. I enjoyed watching the games. I had my head just glued to the screen, or my eyes glued to the screen, with the West Ham Villa game, and I also had the Chelsea Wolves game on, the Leicester United game. It was just fun to have it all on at once, even though it's chaos, and you're like, I can't watch them all. You know?
Was I the only one with 10 TV screens up in my living room?
I had four. So
I also had four.
Yeah. My wife's like, can you get off the YouTube?
Yeah.
But anyways, all right. So the recap of all the games. We're just going to run through them real quick. We had United 2-0 over Leicester. Chelsea 2-0 over Wolves. Southampton 3-1 over Sheffield. And a good game, actually. Newcastle losing to Liverpool. Liverpool wins 3-1. Villa, West Ham 1-1 draw. Villa stays up. Brighton beats Burnley 2-1 and secures them solid 2 spots above last. And excited to see them next year. We have Arsenal 3-2 over Watford and City 5-0 over Norwich. Crystal Palace tied Tottenham 1-1, and Bournemouth beat Everton in a heartbreaker because it didn't matter 3-1. So let's get to it. Andy, your boys won. They beat. So that's good for you. But Tyler, we have Chelsea Wolves 2-0. Give us your take on the game.
Man, going into that game, I was nervous for Chelsea, just because you didn't really know what was going to happen, and you have the Leicester United game going on. One of them's probably in Champions League, depending on how that goes. And then if Chelsea somehow find a way to lose, they may not be in it, right? So I think there was a lot of pressure on Chelsea going into the game. And as it kind of started, it was kind of like, what's the flow going to happen? How are the first 20 minutes going to be like? What's going to be going down? But I think the key to the game was Mason Mount. He came out and he really played well. He had a lot of creative chances. He obviously had the free kick goal. I don't know if you guys saw what Frank Lampard's reaction when he scored that free kick goal was. He looked like a proud father. It was awesome. It was awesome to see. I thought Pulisic played really well too, and ultimately Chelsea get the win. And that win for them not only put them in a Champions League position, but that was a huge impact for Wolves too. We'll talk a little bit more about Wolves and the situation with Europa moving forward here in this episode, but that was a huge loss for them because they fell out of sixth place. They don't have any chance in Europa now. And not too long ago, we were talking about could Wolves make Champions League, and now they're seventh place. So ultimately, I think it was disappointing for Wolves. And I think that when I mentioned a relief for any team, I think Chelsea probably had the biggest weight pulled off their shoulders with that win. They're guaranteed Champions League next year. They've done it with the transfer ban. I think 8 youth academy players have been in that squad pretty consistently this year. And, now going into next season, they've got a lot of momentum and a lot to look forward to with some new players coming in. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see if they can do it again or better. But ultimately, that was an awesome game to see. And, I'm happy for Chelsea to be able to lock Champions League down for another year.
Definitely. I think you hit a lot of the main points there. I think my only take from the game is, regardless of what happened to Wolves in this game, and they're still in Europa League, so they got there's still that fighting chance of a trophy this
That's
year.
true.
So I think regardless, Nuno Espirito Santo has to walk away from the Premier League and say it's been a great year, it's been successful. Let's build on this. But yeah, I was hoping for a little bit more of a fight. I mean, not that they didn't play well, but it just
Yeah.
seemed like Chelsea dominated the game. Mount's free kick, gorgeous. I'm actually probably more of a Mount hater, some would say. I critique him harshly, I don't know why I do that, but so when he scored that, I was like, of course, Mount scored, but this is beautiful, quite honestly. And Giroud on the board again. Everyone knows that I believe that Giroud's a real Premier League striker, and
Giroud's goal was awesome too. Not only was it a ton of effort, that put him on double-digit scoring for the year, I think, and that's for the amount of time that he plays. That's a pretty large impact. That I think next year between him, Werner, Tammy, it's gonna be interesting to see how he's utilized.
Definitely, and I think we're all going to deep dive into the Chelsea, situation and their whole squad and what it looks like, probably in a few weeks' time, because it's going to be one of the biggest buzz, in the whole Premier League. Andy, do you have any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, real quick, before I dive into the game, I've got to talk about the lineups ahead of time because these are probably the biggest headlines out of anything.
Yeah.
I thought it was very bold of Frank Lampard to sit out Kepa, Arrizabalaga on the final game of the season, arguably the biggest game of the season. Wow. My God, I tip my hat off to Frank. That is a bold move, but at the end of the day, he's the manager. And the fact that he was able to put that lineup up, he was willing to give Willie a chance. And I don't think Willie had to do a whole lot that game. So I think it ended up
but he gets the shutout,
off
the clean
for him,
sheet.
but for sure. So he got the shutout, but that was a pretty big statement. And I mean, that's something we can kind of talk about later in transfer segments. I happen to think Kepa is for sure out. That is a very big and bold statement to make to a player, and especially when you're the highest paid goalkeeper. So that was interesting for me. Now, kind of going on the other side to Wolves, I was very surprised that Adama Traore did not start this game. I thought that when he came on in the second half, it brought a whole new light to Wolves that they should have had from minute one. So I was a little bit confused to see that in the starting lineup. And also Vinagre didn't start either, and he's the left wing back on that left side for their wing back system. He's incredibly pacey. I feel like they would have needed that with Pulisic going up against him on that side. So I happen to think that there were a couple errors in terms of the lineup and how they approached the game a little bit. But ultimately, I thought it was a pretty comfortable game for Chelsea. They owned the game for most of the time. Pulisic obviously brought some great energy. But going back to what you guys were saying with Giroud, I mean, Giroud has been such great form recently, and his work ethic is just amazing. You can tell that he loves the club there. He loves pushing for it. And you could just see that in his effort. He was manhandling the center backs in order to make that goal happen. And ultimately, it was Chelsea's night, and I don't think Wolves were set up and too prepared for that game.
Yeah, definitely. Notes: Giroud has 9 goals for the year, including trophy runs. And yeah, Traore. Yeah, definitely. When you think about, he wasn't even starting until Project Restart. I don't think, maybe a little bit before that, when Tammy kind of cooled off. I think it definitely makes the striker topic interesting for them. Everyone knows that I push for Giroud to get recognized because I think in that lineup he gets lost. But I've heard multiple times on NBC Sports Network, you hear the Robbies talk about how he's one of those strikers that's who midfielders and wingers want to play with because he's trying to get on the end of every ball. And, it pays dividends. And, definitely going to be interesting next year with the striker situation. But yes, good game. Wolves still have a chance in a sense of getting into Europe. We'll see how it goes. They play Olympiacos upcoming. And, we'll just see how it pans out for them. But the big game of the weekend, unfortunately for some, but if you're a Red Devil, it was an amazing game. You have United beating Leicester 2-0 in Leicester. Of course, there's no fans. But, Andy, you got to start with you here. Give us your take.
That was a really disappointing game. I am not going to lie. Just from the sense of that both teams didn't play well. No one really stood out in that game. And you could kind of tell that nerves were definitely playing a factor in the first half. I think for United, Bruno Fernandes was really not in the game early on. There were a couple tackles that he felt, the call should have gone the other way, and he never got the call. And you could just tell he was a little bit rattled throughout that first half. A lot of his passes weren't crisp. You had Paul Pogba making the same type of mistakes that he was making in the previous games at the holding midfield role in terms of segueing it out of the back. So I didn't think it was the best game for both teams, but the penalty obviously pretty much completely changed the whole mental tempo of that game. Because then United were in a pretty comfortable position. Leicester had to push up a lot harder in order to create opportunities. And ultimately, Johnny Evans was the one that kind of shot themselves in the foot there, going in with that late challenge, then getting a red card. But at the end of the day, it wasn't like a malicious tackle or anything, so nothing against him. But Leicester had great midfield shape. They owned the midfield. They made it hard for United to get out of their own half. But they just weren't really clinical in the final third, and the opportunities just really weren't there for them.
Yeah, definitely. And before I get to you, Tyler, just you're not going to mention that Jesse Lingard goal? It was a beauty. No, Tyler, what you got?
Man, that Lingard goal is that is as classic Jesse Lingard as I can imagine.
If I had to guess how Lingard would score his first goal in a long time, that's pretty much exactly how I would have pictured it, unfortunately.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think when you look at this game, and really if you look at the big picture of both teams since Project Restart, United have been playing well, Leicester have not. I didn't know what to expect with this game. I did pick United to win. I was rooting for United a little bit more. I like them a little better than Leicester. But ultimately, I think Andy hit it on the head. I don't think either team played too well, and I think Leicester lost the game more than United won it. And I think they went, it was 60-plus minutes without a goal. And when you're in a game of that caliber and that significant of a game where, whichever team wins makes Champions League, there's a lot going on, and you're in 60-plus minutes and no one's scored a goal yet, those nerves and that pressure starts to build up a lot. And oftentimes it can be whichever team makes the first mistake. And that's exactly what happened. And Bruno Fernandes was able to capitalize. After that, the momentum shifted a little bit, and the game was pretty much over. In terms of an individual performance, I thought Greenwood stood out from what I saw. There were a couple times where I saw him making good runs off the ball that just really were impressive, and I think he deserves credit for that. I wish he would have been on the score sheet, but ultimately, I think it was just one of those games that had a lot of hype, but it was what it was, and United ended up on the W side of it,
I think,
and are now in Champions League because of it.
Definitely, and I think it's important to remember, if you're those coaches, you got to be with a defensive mindset. You can't give away a bad goal. Yep. Leicester had 13 shots and only 3 on target. So, United had 6 shots, 3 on target. So no one's getting shots on goal. It's going to come down to whoever makes the first mistake. Johnny Evans makes Bruno Fernandes gets a penalty in the 71st minute, and it changes everything, and then Lingard puts one away in the 98th minute, right? So just kind of insult to injury at that point. I don't really have any key takeaways. I thought it was an awful game to watch.
What did you think about that little mishap when De Gea fumbled the ball and Vardy did what Vardy should have done, tried to score, but De Gea came up a little upset? What do you guys think of that?
Go ahead, Andy. You can go first.
I had Kepa moments. I'm not gonna lie. I was getting very worried that he was gonna pull another Kepa, pull another De Gea, and it was right back to where we've been these past couple of weeks. So I was definitely pretty nervous about that. Cam, what about you?
When it happened, I was sitting there ready to text you guys. I told you, De Gea is old.
Yeah.
But I don't blame Vardy for doing that. De Gea getting mad, I get it. But he understands it.
One thing I would like to point out, though, about Leicester is that Brendan Rodgers had the best setup to this game. His mindset was to crowd the midfield, play that wingback system that United struggle against, crowd the midfield so it's hard to get in that defensive third. But they let United have the ball and let United make the same mistakes that they always do when they're playing it from the defense to the midfield. So he was waiting for United to make those mistakes, and then they were pouncing it with a counterattack. And that is a great strategy to have when you need to score, but you don't want to be risky and push your team all the way up. So I thought Brendan Rodgers had a very good setup that game. It was just very unfortunate that I felt like they couldn't convert those chances. Like you said, 13 shots, only 3 of them on target. That's just not good enough.
Yeah, and I agree. There was one key moment that really could have flipped the game on its back and caused it to be the other result was, I think it was in the first half. Matic, right outside his own 18, just plays it right to, I don't know who it was, but he plays it right to Leicester. He obviously thought he had someone on the outside there, and that was the perfect mistake for Leicester to capitalize on, but they couldn't quite put it in the back of the net. If they score that goal, man, the momentum completely shifts the other way, and we may be having a very different discussion. So yeah. I think that, like you said, I think from a tactics perspective, Rodgers did everything right. It just wasn't Leicester's day.
Yeah, I'm looking at the midfield here. I don't remember the last time I've seen them play with 3-5-2 with Chowdhury in the midfield, so I definitely think they're crowding as much as they could. I think at the end of the day, though, it was underwhelming to watch as a fan on Championship Sunday.
Yeah.
And that was my takeaway, but I definitely think if you're going to play United and you right now and you want to beat them, you need to let them have the ball more than you do, because the way United's been counterattacking over the past 8 weeks is they have it to a T. So I'd rather crowd the midfield, let them have the possession, and just pass the ball back and forth and hit them with the counter punch. To Andy's point, Rodgers was trying that. It just didn't work. But it was a good game. It was a massive game for points. So that is almost all of Europe. And then you have Tottenham tying Crystal Palace, and they sneak in for 6th. We'll see how that turns out. But let's just go ahead and do a rundown. Liverpool, 99 points on the year. Your champions. Man City, closer than it ever looked all season at 81 points. United, 66. Chelsea, 66. United had 15 more goals scored, though, in their goal differential, which is insane. And Leicester, 62. Tottenham, 59. Wolves, 59. And then you have Arsenal, 56. So that's the 1 through 8 there. The top 5 are guaranteed Europe. 6th place is kind of a hit or miss, and we'll get into that when we talk about the FA Cup in the near future here. But yeah, I just want to give everyone kind of an update on what we're talking about there. So that's the top. Let's talk about the bottom. It was a great weekend to watch soccer at the bottom of the table, and that's my favorite place to be, because I'm just kind of always rooting for an underdog, it feels like. So at the bottom, we had Arsenal, who has a chance to get into Europe, and let's hit this game first, right? So Arsenal beats Watford 3-2. Watford they pretty much all they need is a draw, and their goal differential was kind of trash, so they needed a win towards the end of the game. I remember in the 80th minute, they're like, well, they got to score 2, so Watford needed a win. Tyler, give us your take on this game.
This was the most exciting game of the weekend for me. I mean, honestly, and I did not expect that at all. I went into the weekend thinking United-Leicester was going to be the defining match, and here I am watching Arsenal-Watford on the edge of my seat the whole time. And since we started this project and this podcast over the last few weeks, I have found myself watching the bottom of the table a lot more than I normally would, and I find myself rooting for teams like West Ham, teams like Watford, sometimes even Villa. But when I was watching this Arsenal-Watford game, I was really, really rooting for Watford to pull it out, because it was exciting. They had a lot of opportunities, and I wanted to see them in the Premier League again. And it's just one of those games where it was almost like playing FIFA. Everything they tried to do, they just couldn't get it to score, couldn't get the ball in the net, and Arsenal's scrambling, and that's what it was. However, let me back up for a second, because the way the game started, it was all Arsenal. And I will say those first 20, 30 minutes were not the most exciting of the weekend, right? Arsenal gets up in a very quick 2-0 lead. You think Watford's done, it's over. Aubameyang scores this bike. It's 3-0 before you know it. It's like, okay, let me change the channel. I'll come back to that if I see something. And then you come back to it in the second half, and Watford is just pouring it on. And especially in those last 20 minutes or so, I mean, it was just exciting. Danny Welbeck almost scores a back heel. I really wish that would have gone in, but it was a great save by Martinez. And ultimately, Arsenal win 3-2. And Watford goes down, Villa stays up. But man, if Watford had been able to finish like 10% better than they did, they probably would have stayed in. And it was just exciting to watch. And I wish Watford would have scored more. It was disappointing as a Watford fan. It's probably the most heartbreaking, between them and Bournemouth. Those are both very heartbreaking ways to go out. They actually finished under Bournemouth in the table, and I don't think that that's necessarily respective of how they've performed throughout the season, but just this last couple weeks have been rough for Watford, and they end up going down.
I think key points when you talk about Watford, the game itself, Watford get that penalty right before half. So in the 33rd minute, they're down 3-0. They get a penalty right before half. That goal is crucial to their momentum, their confidence, everything. So I'm glad they got that goal. It gets them back in the game. I think it's important to note that they've gone through 4 managers in this year.
Yeah.
So when you have that much turnover, I mean, first of all, we all know the Nigel Pearson situation. You look at that Man City game, you think their goal differential would have been different. A tie today could have been, there's some different million scenarios. But like Watford were destined to go down come January. So, I don't know. Them going down isn't a surprise if you look at the full season. When you look at their talent level, it shouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
Andy,
exactly.
on the game.
The one thing I'll say is I'm going to go back to the Nigel Pearson thing and going through 3 different managers in one season. I mean, you just got to look at the board and you just know that they're panicking at that point. I mean, to sack 3 different managers in one season just kind of shows that you have deeper issues within a club. And I think that was the worrying thing for Watford. And I think that also affected the mentality in some way, shape, or form. And that's why they didn't have such a hot start. And credit to Arsenal. Arsenal have been looking pretty good in these past couple of weeks. They were very well set up. I never thought I'd say this, but David Luiz looked really good at center back in that game, and he was commanding the rest of the line really well. I thought Tierney also had a wonderful game with that beautiful throw in over to Aubameyang in order to make that bicycle happen. He was solid in the back. He made great decisions. So I happen to think that Arsenal played pretty well in that game. But like you said, in the last couple minutes with Watford, they were driving, man. There were so many opportunities for them to score. They did get that one back, but they were just a little bit short, and you have to feel for them. But as Cam kind of mentioned before, it just felt like Watford were destined to go down just based on the things that have occurred over the past couple weeks with them, sacking 3 different managers in one season. There's just not good things going on over there, and I think that they're gonna have a rough time in the championship come next year, especially with all the money that they've spent on players the past couple years.
Definitely,
they're gonna probably go through a reorg.
Yeah, they very well might, and it'll be interesting. Watford had an interesting story to get up to the Premier League, so it'll be, they might come right back. Who would, it wouldn't surprise me either. My takes on the game was that Danny Welbeck had like 3-4 chances, which is great to see again. Always was a player that never lived up to his hype. Now there's no hype around him. He's getting comfortable. He's getting some playing time, and he almost had an outside the foot. He almost had a back heel. And of course he did put one in. But Watford looked decent. They looked like they wanted to stay up. And I think that's, something important to mention when you talk about the morale and everything going on around them. At least the players on the pitch never gave up. And, they didn't give up on their fan base. So that's important because you look at Norwich and you're like, they tossed the season out 6 weeks ago. So, it's just different. I thought Arsenal played well in the first half. Aubameyang always plays well. He's always going to find the net. The throw-in, his first touch where he knocked the ball back down on the ground, just gorgeous. And Craig Dawson was just getting owned on that. Ceballos had a great game. Luis had a good game. Not having Mustafi, I think that's going to hurt them upcoming in the FA Cup because he's had a good last few weeks. But I think all in all, there's parts of their lineup that look good. Martinez in goal looks good. Don't know what they're going to do with Leno. You know what I mean? When that happens. But Arsenal did well enough and with nothing on the table. So, they pretty much showed up and said, we're not going to make this easy for Watford. And they didn't. So, good on Watford for giving us a great watch and a great last 15 minutes. But, I hate to see him going down, but it seemed like it was bound to happen. So, another big game at the bottom. Probably the most anticipated game at the bottom. Kind of like the other week when we were like Watford, West Ham, and it was underwhelming. This time we didn't even hype it. Aston Villa, West Ham, didn't hype it too much, and it was a decent game. Andy, do you want to start with this one? Any takes on that?
It was the Jack Grealish storyline. I mean, he's the Villa homeboy. At the end of the day, him getting that goal was just huge for the club, and it was funny when you saw that moment happen, just seeing the whole team celebrate with him, knowing that he's a hometown hero, and just, it was a fairy tale ending for them. And you got to tip your hat off to Villa. They believed that they could stay up, and they had that mentality going into the game, and they put up a really good fight up against West Ham. I thought that Grealish had a couple opportunities for a couple of curlers, especially that's kind of his key method of scoring. I thought he should have put a couple of those away, but they had 4 chances in the first 10 minutes or so. So Villa was coming out hot, and they had the mentality in order to go and earn a point in this game. Antonio in the 11th minute should have had a sitter in the box that he should have put away. But I thought ultimately West Ham, Souček and Declan Rice absolutely owned the midfield in this game. There was nothing that went on in that midfield from either side without their hand in it. And I thought that was the most impressive thing about West Ham was both of them, owning that. And Declan Rice had a couple Pogba type moments where he would see these long through balls that would just completely open up space and cause some trouble for Villa a little bit. So I happen to think Souček and Rice had a really good game. Pepe Reina does make a little bit of a mistake in order to drop to drop 2 of those points, but Villa won't care. They still qualify. They stay in the Premier League for next season. But ultimately, it was a really good game.
Yeah, definitely. I think important things at a West Ham. I didn't know Souček would be this good in the Premier League. You know, when you look at him as a player, he doesn't look like he has the fit to be an attacking midfielder, and it's good to see. Bowen has had a good run in for West Ham coming into the last. And that's a player who's been outcasted by English fans. And then you have Declan Rice, who had like 6 long shot attempts in this game. Did not capitalize on any of them. Was hoping he would. Fredericks had a rough game. Grealish dominated him on that wing. Grealish definitely gave it to him all game, which I thought was interesting. They had a little bicker at the beginning of the game, and then from there on out, Grealish just ran it. I thought on the Villa side, Konza played okay. Gilbert played okay. McGinn had a good game. Hurahan played well. Target played well. Target's one of my favorite players on their team. Target played well. Grealish didn't play that great. Grealish did play well. We didn't capitalize on chances. And the rest of the lineup was pretty quiet. So can't do much about that Pepperina goal, but like you said, it doesn't really matter. I thought overall as a fan, it was a good game to watch on the last day. I'm glad this game happened. It was important, and every once in a while you want to see them go head to head, at the bottom, see what it looks like. But, Villa stay up. We'll see if this is the calm before the relegation storm next year, etc. We'll find out. But Tyler, what are your takes on the game?
Yeah, I'm going to start with West Ham on this. I think it's important to note the David Moyes effect for them. Since he's come in, their form has been much better. And I think we were talking before the episode here. They were very far down at the bottom before come January, and then David Moyes shows up, and here they are, and they stay up in the Premier League. And I think it's important that you talk about a guy like Souček who comes in and plays above expectations of what you think he's going to be in the Premier League, but the way that he fits into their system is just so perfect. And David Moyes has a very unique thing going to where all of those players believe in him right now. And I think that's important moving in next season. But I think ultimately for West Ham and the way that they played over the course of the ending of this season, these last 4 weeks, they did deserve to move up. Obviously, a wicked deflection for their goal to get them the point in this game. It is what it is. But ultimately, I've been really enjoying watching West Ham play football. They've been one of the more fun bottom side of the table teams to watch, in my opinion. I'm very excited to see what happens with them next season. I'm glad that they were able to capitalize in their season with a point in an exciting game. Then I move over to Villa. I think it's important, right? You talk about Jack Grealish. You guys both had interesting takes on him. And I think the way that I would summarize Jack Grealish in this game was he played well, but not up to expectations. And there's an early opportunity where he should have just easily put the ball in the net. He had his right foot, an easy curler angle, and he shoots it right at the goalie. Even the goal that he scored, let's be honest, that should have been saved. I mean, it had some power on it, but he should have saved that. So I think when you look at Grealish as an individual player, I actually kind of hope he stays at Villa. I think he's still got a little time to develop there before he moves on to a bigger club. And I also think Villa need him. He's really their key piece. But my favorite part of that game and all of its excitement, especially the way it ended with the goal on one side and the goal back to respond, it was a little bit of a roller coaster because the emotions of it was my favorite part throughout the whole game. Because if you're a Villa supporter and they went and they showed the, whatever you call them, the bubble fans or the fans through their VR, you could just tell how nervous they were and all of their reactions the whole time. And then while that game's going on, you don't know what's happening with the Watford situation and everything else. So you don't know if a draw is really going to be enough. And then you score this goal. Jack Grealish is the hometown hero. All this emotion comes in. Everybody's excited. You're at the top of the world. You're staying in the Premier League. And then the wicked deflection happens. And you just see the emotion on the fans' faces that they showed, on the players' faces. Grealish was standing like, are you kidding me? Like, what just happened? And now you're back in the situation for these last few minutes of the game where it's like, is a draw going to be enough? And it ultimately ends up being a draw. The whole team gets together in this huddle and watches the last minute of the Watford game. And as soon as that game went final, everybody loses their minds. I love to see that. I love when teams come together and do that type of stuff, no matter what sport it is. And so for me, that was probably the most emotional part of the weekend in a positive way. And that's kind of what we all, as fans of the game, as players of the game, those are the type of things you dream about when it comes to football and soccer and sports in general. And I was really happy to see that. And it's going to be interesting to see what chess gets played in terms of summer moves and stuff for Villa and how things move forward now that they are going to stay up in the Premier League, and that's a guaranteed thing.
Definitely. I think some notes on like kind of our takes there. Villa, Birmingham boy, you're right, Andy. Great point. I mean, he's a hometown here. He's a Peaky Blinder, Birmingham, So that's good to see. I think also to your point, Tyler, about more of like the fans and all that. They got together after that win, and "Sweet Caroline" is the song they play when they win or like when they grab points. So they were singing "Sweet Caroline."
Yeah.
If you watch the room after the game, they're going nuts. It's cool to see Grealish celebrate with them because personally, I think it's his last game as a Villa boy. We'll see. But yeah, big football club, big soccer club. They're important to the Premier League. They need to be up. So good on them.
Now that we've recapped the bottom teams, I got a question for you guys, and I think this will be interesting. Of the bottom 3 teams that survived, that's Brighton, West Ham, and Aston Villa. Which of those 3 teams do you think has the best chance at making a run in the Premier League next year, and why? And then which team is going to be fighting for relegation, do you think, of the 3, and why?
All right, I'll go. So Villa's going down next year. If things this path, they just learned how to play defense during a pandemic. Like a pandemic saved their season. So honestly, unless they can get shape and form, they're going to be in the same situation where they have enough goals, but they just lack decision making late in games, and they give up very weak goals. Like, I hate to say that was a typical Villa moment, because it wasn't. It was kind of a freak goal. But if that was any other type of goal, I'd been like, same old Villa, So I could definitely see Villa going down. Brighton getting already confirmed Lallana. I think Brighton are going to take steps. They've been in the league now 4 years, I think. Maybe it's 3. But they definitely probably have the financial backing now where they're stable. And I wouldn't surprise me if they go get another player. West Ham, if they stick with Moyes, which they may not, that would be the deciding factor for me.
Yeah.
If West Ham stays up or goes down. But, look, West Ham are talking to as much young talent as they can get. They know that they don't have a lot of money to spend. And if David Moyes is the guy, they know that they're going to be limited on money. He already knows that. So they're looking at a few young starlets across the championship, things like that. And we'll see what happens. But I think Moyes is key to West Ham staying up, honestly. But if Villa went down next year, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I think it's interesting. I think Brighton is one of those like just stable, like forever middle of the table teams. Maybe even bottom third, but they're not really fighting for relegation. They're Brighton. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Right. So I think it's important you mentioned the Lallana deal. I think that's good for them. But I don't see too much changing for Brighton. And then when you look at both West Ham and Aston Villa, I'm going to run on the assumption that there's no crazy changes, right? I'm going to assume Grealish stays. I'm going to assume Declan Rice stays, because if guys like that leave, it's very easy to say they're going down. But assuming there aren't too many crazy changes, I think you're right when you talk about Moyes being the key. And for that reason, with the way that West Ham ended the season, I think they've got some good momentum. They've got some good pieces to the puzzle. And if David Moyes stays, I think that they've got the right mentality moving forward to stay up. And I think they're moving in the right direction. And like you said, their youth is looking good too. So I think West Ham is going to have the synergy to stay up. So to answer part 1 of your question, I think West Ham has the best chance to stay up. Villa, I think, has the best chance to go down out of these 3 teams. Because even you mentioned that goal going in would be like a typical Villa moment. It's just that, like, we can't even put it into words. When I watch Villa play, I'm constantly like disappointed in them because I feel like they're not playing up to their potential. I feel like Grealish could play better. Reina lets in that goal. It was a wicked deflection, but he could have saved it if he had a little bit better positioning or a little bit quicker feet. And over the course of his career, he's been a great goalie, right? But he's still got to play up to that potential. They learned how to play defense recently, you mentioned. Well, they need to continue to get better and continue because they let in, 67 goals this season?
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
unacceptable. You're not going to stay in the Premier League if you're letting in 67 goals a season, no matter who you have as your number 10. So I think that Aston Villa just needs to get better in general. And out of those three teams, I think they have the least chance to move on.
Definitely, and I think a key point to your question there, Andy, is like who is going to have the goal production. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, Villa lost Wesley, their main striker last year.
Right.
They also lost Tammy Abraham when they came up. He was on loan last year, so they knew like when Wesley got injured, they knew goal production would be a problem. And I think it was in December. He's still not back. When you look at Brighton, they got Mape. Mape's first year in the Premier League, puts 10 in the back of the net. Like, they're moving in the right direction at Brighton. Villa, I think you're going to be very stagnant. And West Ham, it's just a flip of the coin on what they do with their manager.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Yeah.
But
I think the one thing I would point out real quick about Villa, and I agree with both your sentiments, I happen to believe that West Ham has the best situation to succeed in the Premier League next year. And I happen to think that with David Moyes and a couple key signings, they could even be a middle of the pack team and they could even, push for top half. I think that they do have the quality there if you can build a team around Souček and Declan Rice. Now, The one thing I will say about Villa is Villa's in obviously a weird predicament with Jack Grealish because they don't have the money right now to support their current side, but at the same time, they need to keep Jack Grealish. If they were to reorganize their team, they would have to sell Jack Grealish. But at this point, with how well he's done for them, is that something you're willing to let go of? So I think Villa are kind of in a lose-lose situation up there. I do think that if they're able to stick with the team that they have and they're able to come up with a better system for them, and they have a chance. But I happen to think Brighton will do a little bit better than Villa next season.
Yeah. I think West Ham definitely have the foundation and like they have the infrastructure. I know they don't have the funds right now to make moves, but they have the infrastructure and they do have some players that are going to play a big role if they stay up. I think it's also important to see who's coming up and what they're going to bring to the table. But honestly, I can't wait to see how the transfer all plays out because Tyler mentioned Villa. He played under his expectations every time he watches them. I think Grealish was great until February. And then he's cooled off ever since. So he's very much like in a Tammy Abraham situation where it's what's done for me lately. So, and for his transfer market, that's going to hurt. And, you guys can dive into all that. And we'll do some dives in as a whole main panel in the offseason and all that. But, I think it's important to mention Bournemouth had a good game. They beat Everton 3-1. They gave it their all. And they needed Villa to lose.
Was it Bournemouth, not this week, but the week before, didn't they have a VAR offsides call? See, that moment for me was Bournemouth's heartbreak, and winning just wasn't enough. And he was offsides, but it was just, I remember watching that game, and it was just like, oh, man, I just felt bad for them. And it ended up being where winning this last game wasn't enough. And you go back to a game like that, and it's like, gosh, if they could have just pulled out a couple results throughout the season, they wouldn't have been in that position.
Definitely.
You could mention VAR in a couple different contexts, and one I would like to add here too is the Aston Villa and Sheffield United game when that ball was clearly in the goal and that one didn't get called. That was a massive point for Villa, and that would put them dead even with who was the one that got relegated at 18th?
Bournemouth.
It would have been Bournemouth
and Watford. It puts them out.
It
has one better goal differential, so they would have had two better in that situation. You're right.
No. I don't want to do hindsight 2020 and say, VAR could have done this, VAR could have done that. VAR was called at that moment in time. There's no point in going back. But now that it did happen, I mean, you can't help but think about it just a little bit. But at the end of the day, you can't really completely blame VAR, but VAR did have a couple mistakes in that sense.
I think Mr. Varchester United can't talk too much. Just kidding. But Bournemouth, I think it sucks because it's a fairy tale ending. They were on the brink of administration when Eddie Howe took over, and they win a game to not drop out of league football. They're about to go down to like the 5th tier in England, and then he promotes them three times in 4 years and gets them to the Premier League. So it's just a crazy story. So it's coming to an end, and it's an emotional thing as a Bournemouth player, and Eddie Howe's got to be feeling emotions right now. And I hope to see him back, but we'll see. Those are my notes on that. Also, West Brom out. West Brom, welcome back to the Premier League. We need to mention that. QPR drew you, got you into second place. Awesome. Fulham is up on Cardiff in the first leg in the playoff, and I believe also Brentford is losing to
Brentford
Swan.
got a huge red card in that game. I could not believe they gave that up so early. That was Brentford, who are pushing for second place, to now be struggling in this playoff. It's so sad to see. But at the same time, though, that's football.
Yeah, and I think it's important that there's always a Welsh team in. Wales is important. And Norwich going down. You have two options now. You have Cardiff and Swansea. Hopefully, one of them can get in. We'll see how it goes. But let's talk Golden Boot. Congratulations to Jamie Vardy. 24 goals, 23.
23.
Ederson, Golden Glove. No one was tracking him. He got 15. Man City with a 5-0 win against Norwich on the last day. That's important. Champions League is upcoming. But before we have that, we have the FA Cup final. So let's talk about this, and then we'll wrap it up. Tyler, FA Cup final. We have Chelsea versus Arsenal. We have a London FA Cup final in Wembley with no fans. Who do you got?
I wish there were fans for this because this is going to be an exciting game. I think both teams are in a position where, Frank Lampard wants to bring a trophy home. If Arsenal win, they qualify for Europa. That's huge for them. And, Mikel Arteta wants to bring in some sort of positive news on the way that this season has been going for Arsenal. I think both teams come out with as much of an A-team lineup as they can provide. I think both defenses are a little weak. I think it's a back and forth, probably pretty high-scoring game. I think there's going to be 5 goals scored. And ultimately, I would predict a 3-2 win for Arsenal. I'm going to say Arsenal gets in. They win the FA Cup. They get into Europa, and it pushes Tottenham out. That's what I think. That's what I am going to see what happens.
Hey, that's a lot of motivation. Not only a trophy in your first year, but to, screw your rival. Can't beat it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chelsea, Andy, do you think they're going to win?
Oh, I think Chelsea is going to win this game, and I do want to highlight something that Tyler already mentioned. This is going to be a crazy game. You got Chelsea finally have a lot of pressure lift off of their shoulders, not having to contend for Champions League, so it's going to be a lot more free play from them. Could hurt them, but that also could be good for them. And then obviously Arsenal, they have everything to play for in order for them to make Europa. So, and both of them are struggling teams in terms of defense. Both of them have high power, high scoring offensive players. So I happen to think that this is going to be a battle in the midfield, and it's going to be a pretty high scoring game. But ultimately, I do think Chelsea's going to pull this out with a 3-2 victory. I think them coming off of, securing Champions League and having a good spell and a good game against a Wolves side that would have definitely given them a little bit of trouble. I think that momentum will carry with them and ultimately pull them through in this game.
Do you start Kepa or Caballero?
Yeah. You start Giroud or Tammy?
You start Giroud. You have to start Giroud.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, and I think Giroud performing is making it very scary for Tammy to fight for a spot at Chelsea. We've Timo Werner coming. It's kind of hard to say no to Giroud, but Tammy's a lot younger too, so you kind of have to also factor that. But I wonder if they're going to loan one of them out or something, because that's tough. To be pecking order, one of them would have to be the third in the order for strikers, and I don't know if any one of them will be okay with that.
No,
so we'll have to see there.
Giroud said, "Get me out of here." It's not.
Anyway, going back to your question, you have to start. You have to start Willie at this point. You've already made this. You've already made the statement to Kepa. I think there is a chance that he does play Kepa in this game, but I think that with the bold statement that they made in the last game of the Premier League, I think Kepa's already checked out. He's definitely looking for other clubs, but also the same token, it might be a little bit tough for them because it's a pretty high price tag and no one's going to want to pay his wages. So he might actually be stuck there too.
Yeah, you start Caballero because you just started him and you got a clean sheet, and it's that simple right now. Just play it. I think it's just get back to basics on who your goalie is, get some confidence in him, and move forward. I think that my take on the game is Pierre-Emerick's going to get on the board per usual. I think it finishes up 2-1 Chelsea. I think Giroud's going to score. I think Lampard, just like Arteta, wants a trophy in the first year, but I feel like Lampard is more terrifying in the locker room, and he's going to push his message a little bit harder. By the way, manager to watch right now, Frank Lampard. Does it get any more? Him and Jose Mourinho are about to be the most exciting managers next year to watch.
Careful, make sure you don't gloat in front of him.
Yeah, right.
You'll see Franco pretty upset.
Yeah. Arsenal wins.
That's what they need to do the next documentary on is Chelsea.
Fact with this offseason. Where's the hard knocks?
Yeah, right.
I think Tammy needs to step up in preseason, or he needs to leave. And it's not because he should, because he's young, but I think he wants playing time. And I know Giroud's not going to stick around for the bench, and they're dedicated to Timo Werner. So,
See, I think they stay. I think they stay because they're in every tournament. They're going to need depth, and there's going to be some sort of rotation. There's probably going to be at some point someone's going to, unfortunately, as bad as this is to say, and I hate to say it, injuries are going to happen. And you've got guys like Timo who he can play striker, but he can also play on the left. I think it depends heavily on what happens with Willian too. There's just a lot of attackers, and the easy thing to say is, well, let's loan out Tammy or let's sell Giroud. But I think both of them have important roles with the team, and I think they could be utilized. And I have no idea what Frank's going to do. And I think, to your point, it's going to be interesting to see. He's a manager, to see what he does now that he's not with a youth academy team, and how he rotates them all in, because he's won all these things and been so successful with guys like Mason Mount and Tammy Abraham. It's not going to be the easiest thing for him to do to start Timo Werner over that, but that's going to be the decision that he's going to have to come to, bias and emotion to the side. And I think that's going to be an important thing to watch as he grows as a manager, how he makes those decisions with this team and how he keeps all of them happy in the locker room.
Definitely. I think it's going to be one of the topics of the offseason, and we'll keep track of it.
Yep.
FA Cup, best luck to both London teams and their fans. But those are just our predictions. Don't get mad at us.
Or get mad.
Yeah, or get mad. And then you have Champions League, which is coming back. We're not going to dive into it this week, but we're all excited that it's back. So look forward to that next week on the podcast. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great week. Andy, Tyler, it's been fun. I'll see you next week, fools.
Yeah.
See you guys later. Don't forget to check out Transfer Thursday.
Yes.
That's right.
I'll see you. Everyone, check us out on Spotify now. Have a good one.